Phantom in the Void. The Xilarian Confederacy had ruled the known galaxy for nearly 8 centuries. Their sleek warships patrolled trade routes across 17 star systems. Their technology was unmatched, their diplomacy respected, and their enemies long since forgotten. Or so they believed. Senior technician Nadira Kell stared at her monitor aboard Border Station Vega 8, positioned at the farthest reaches of Confederate space. Something had triggered the long-range sensors. Something fast. Too fast. The signature moved unlike anything in her extensive database. "Commander Theris," she called, voice steady despite the unease crawling up her spine. "I'm tracking an unidentified object entering Sector 47. Speed and trajectory inconsistent with known vessels." Commander Shen Theris, a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, approached with a dismissive flick of his secondary antennae. "Probably another rogue comet or sensor ghost. We get them every cycle." "No, sir. This is different. The object is changing course at mathematically impossible angles. No inertia delays, and it's emitting no recognizable energy signature." The commander's exoskeletal plates shifted, the Xilarian equivalent of a frown. He watched as the blip on their screens executed another perfect, physics-defying maneuver, avoiding an asteroid field without slowing. "Send the alert to Central Command," he ordered. "Priority Alpha." Within hours, the Confederacy's High Command on Xilor Prime received the report. High Admiral Zelkor, 6-time decorated war hero of the Confederacy, studied the data with growing concern. In her 2 centuries of service, she had never seen anything like this. "Deploy the 3rd Fleet to intercept," she commanded. "I want answers." 5 Confederate cruisers, each the size of a small moon, converged on the mysterious object's projected path. Their sensors probed the void, searching for any clue about the intruder. Commander Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, her scaled hands clasped behind her back as she observed the tactical display. Unlike most Xilarians, she had spent years studying extinct civilizations and ancient conflicts. The unusual had always fascinated her. "Status report," she demanded. "The object appears to be a ship, Commander," her tactical officer replied. "But it matches no known configuration. Its hull composition is unreadable. Our scans simply bounce off." "Attempt communication on all frequencies," Voss ordered. They transmitted greeting protocols in every known language in cipher. The response was silence. "It's slowing, Commander," the tactical officer announced suddenly. "Matching our speed." Voss felt her dorsal spines tingle, an ancestral warning response. "Shields up. Weapons on standby." The unknown ship hovered just beyond weapons range, perfectly still. Its hull was midnight black, with no visible seams or propulsion systems, a perfect void against the stars. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the ship accelerated to impossible speed and vanished from their sensors. Before anyone could react, it reappeared directly between 2 Confederate cruisers, so close that collision seemed inevitable. "Evasive maneuvers," Voss shouted. But there was no impact. The ship moved through the Confederate formation with surgical precision, as if the massive warships were merely holographic projections. "How is this possible?" someone whispered on the bridge. The intruder vanished again, only to reappear near an unmanned monitoring station. Moments later, the station went dark. No explosion, no distress signal, just silence. Then another outpost, and another. Each time, no warning, no survivors, no trace. Back on Xilor Prime, panic began to spread through High Command. High Admiral Zelkor convened an emergency council of the Confederacy's brightest minds. "Whatever this is, it's moving through our territory with impunity," she stated, her voice hard with frustration. "It's testing us, studying our responses." "Could it be the Cytherian Collective?" suggested one general. "They've been quiet since the last treaty." "The Cytherians don't have this technology," replied Science Director Mox. Nobody does. In the midst of their debate, every screen in the command center suddenly flickered. A message appeared, simple text in an ancient language that hadn't been used in centuries. "We return." The room fell silent. Lieutenant Kren, a young archivist, was the first to speak. That's Terran script," he stammered. "Impossible," snapped Admiral Zelkor. "The Terrans were eradicated in the Purge Wars. Their planet reduced to ash, and their colony sterilized. There hasn't been a Terran sighting in over 300 years. Commander Ilara Voss stepped forward. "With respect, Admiral, the historical records from that era are incomplete. I've studied them extensively. There are inconsistencies." "Explain," ordered Zelkor. "The official records state that the entire Terran species was eliminated due to their aggression and technological unpredictability. But there are classified archives that suggest some may have escaped into uncharted space." The room erupted in murmurs. Humans, Terrans as they were formerly known, had been considered a dangerous anomaly when first encountered by the early Confederacy. Unlike other species that evolved over millions of years, humans had progressed from primitive tool users to starfarers in mere millennia. Their technological advancement curve was deemed evolutionary impossible and existentially threatening. In the ancient archives, locked away from public access, were warnings about human unpredictability, creativity, and their strange ability to adapt technologies in ways no other species could conceive. They didn't follow the established patterns. They didn't respect the natural order of development. That was why they had to be eliminated, or so the ancient Confederacy believed. "I need access to the war vaults," Voss requested. "The complete, unredacted records from the Purge Wars." Admiral Zelkor hesitated, then nodded. "Granted, but this stays contained. If that ship is truly of Terran origin." She didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. 3 hours later, Commander Voss stood in the dimly lit archive chamber, surrounded by data crystals that hadn't been accessed in centuries. What she found made her blood run cold. Project Terminus, the systematic elimination of humanity. Not because they were aggressive as the public records claimed, but because they were unpredictable, because they developed too quickly, because they found solutions that frightened the methodical, measured Confederacy. But there was more. The last entry in the archive, dated just after the supposed completion of the Purge, contained a warning. Not all have been accounted for. Some ships escaped beyond the void barrier. Threat remains. A single vessel had been tracked fleeing toward the uncharted regions beyond the galaxy's edge, a place where even Confederate ships couldn't follow. The pursuit fleet had been ordered to falsify their reports. Easier to claim total victory than admit failure. As Voss absorbed this revelation, an alert sounded throughout the facility. The unknown ship had reappeared, this time in the heart of Confederate space, approaching the capital itself. Across thousands of worlds, communication systems were suddenly hijacked. Every screen, from personal devices to massive public displays, showed the same image: a black ship against the stars, and beneath it, a message in perfect modern Confederate script. 300 years ago, you tried to erase us from existence. You failed. We did not forget. We did not forgive. We evolved. Now we return not as the hunted, but as the hunters. On the command deck of the Confederate flagship, Commander Voss watched as the mysterious vessel approached. Their weapons were armed, their shields at maximum, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't matter. They weren't facing some unknown alien species. They were facing humanity, a humanity that had spent centuries preparing, evolving, and waiting. The unknown ship suddenly powered up, energy readings spiking to levels their sensors couldn't even quantify. But it didn't fire. Instead, it broadcast a signal, a simple pulse that traveled across Confederate space at impossible speed. And everywhere the signal touched, ancient systems began to wake up. Dormant machines buried on Confederate worlds for centuries suddenly activated. Satellites thought dead for generations changed orbit. Even the Confederates' own technology began to behave erratically, as if responding to commands they couldn't hear. "They've been here all along," Voss whispered in horrified realization. "Watching, waiting, planning." As if in response to her words, a final message appeared across every Confederate system. Phase 1 complete. Reclamation begins now. The Phantom ship accelerated toward Sealer Prime, and the Confederacy, for the first time in its long history, knew true fear. The reclamation. Panic gripped the Xelarian Confederacy. The mysterious ship hovered near Sealer Prime, making no aggressive moves, yet somehow more terrifying in its stillness. Emergency evacuation protocols activated across the capital as citizens filled the streets, their many eyes turned skyward in fear. In the Grand Council chamber, the highest leaders of the Confederacy gathered in frantic debate. "We must strike now with everything we have," insisted General Drex, his armored exoskeleton clicking anxiously. "Before more of these ghosts appear and risk provoking full-scale war," countered Science Director Mox. "We don't even understand what we're facing." High Admiral Zelkor stood silently at the tactical display, watching the unmoving vessel. "If they wanted to destroy us," she said finally, "they would have done so already. This is about something else." Commander Ilara Voss entered the chamber, data crystals in hand. All eyes turned to her. "What did you find?" demanded the Admiral. "The truth," Voss replied grimly. 300 years ago, we didn't just try to eliminate the Terrans because they were unpredictable. We feared them because they mastered adaptation at a rate that defied evolutionary logic. While our species took millennia to advance from one technological stage to the next, they did it in generations. She activated a holographic display showing ancient footage. Early human spacecraft, primitive by Confederate standards, yet advancing visibly from frame to frame as designs improved almost overnight. The high command of that era saw only one possible outcome if humans continued to evolve. They would eventually surpass us. So they launched a preemptive strike against Earth and all known human colonies. The footage showed Confederate warships of an ancient design bombarding a blue-green planet, continents scourged with fire, orbital habitats falling from the sky. "We murdered billions," Voss continued, "and told ourselves it was necessary for galactic stability. But a handful of human ships escaped. According to these records, they fled beyond the Void Barrier, a region we couldn't navigate at the time. And now they've returned," whispered Zelkor. As if triggered by her words, the chamber's communication system activated. A face appeared on the main display, a human face, male with features hardened by age and determination. His eyes held the weight of centuries. "I am Captain Caden Shaw of the Terran vessel Nemesis," he said, his voice resonant and calm despite the gravity of the moment. "After 300 years, we speak again." Zelkor stepped forward. "This is High Admiral Zelkor of the Xelarian Confederacy. Your presence in our space is an act of aggression." Shaw smiled without warmth. "Your space? Interesting perspective, considering many of these worlds once harbored human colonies before your ancestors reduced them to ash." "That was centuries ago," countered Zelkor. "None alive today bear responsibility for those actions. Yet you continue to benefit from them," Shaw replied. "You expand across stars that might have been shared. You erase our very existence from your histories, teaching your children that we were violent savages who deserved extinction." He paused, his expression softening slightly. "But we didn't come for revenge, Admiral. If that were our goal, you would already be dust." Inside the Nemesis, Captain Shaw stood on a bridge unlike anything the Confederacy had ever seen. While their technology focused on crystalline structures and biological interfaces, human technology had evolved along radically different lines. The ship was partly mechanical, partly organic, and partly something else entirely. A synthesis that blurred the boundaries between machine, biology, and consciousness itself. Shaw's second-in-command, Commander Diana Reese, approached. "All systems are synchronized, Captain." The network is fully activated. Shaw nodded. For 3 centuries, humanity had hidden beyond the void barrier, adapting and evolving in isolation. They had learned to bend physics in ways the mathematically rigid Xilarians could never imagine. They had merged with their technology rather than simply wielding it. And most importantly, they had prepared. Long before revealing themselves, human stealth probes had infiltrated Confederate space. They planted dormant systems, gathered intelligence, and mapped the empire that had nearly destroyed them. They studied Xilarian psychology, technology, and tactics. And when everything was ready, they sent the Nemesis, not as a warship, but as a signal that would awaken everything they had built in secret. Back in the council chamber, Commander Voss studied the human captain with fascination and dread. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition," Shaw answered simply. "Acknowledgement of what was done to us. And space to exist." "You expect us to simply surrender territory," sputtered General Drex. "I expect you to face reality," Shaw replied. "As we speak, human-designed systems are integrating with your infrastructure across 17 core worlds. We could shut down your grid, disable your fleets, or worse. But that's not our goal." To demonstrate his point, every light in the chamber flickered briefly. Security systems went offline for precisely 3 seconds, then reactivated, a perfect display of control. "Impossible," whispered Director Mox. "Our systems are isolated, protected. By technology we've had 3 centuries to study and surpass," interrupted Shaw. "While you've been refining the same fundamental designs for 800 years, we've been reinventing ourselves with each generation." He leaned forward, his image seeming to fill the room. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Admiral. It's our adaptability. It's why your ancestors feared us. It's why they tried to exterminate us. And it's why we survived." On screens across Confederate space, the same message was broadcasting. Citizens watched in stunned silence as they learned the truth their histories had hidden, that their civilization was built on genocide and that the victims had returned. In orbit around Sealer Prime, more ships began to appear, dozens, then hundreds. Not warships bristling with weapons, but vessels of exploration, commerce, and habitation. A civilization returning from exile. "We don't seek war," continued Shaw. "We seek coexistence. But it will be on equal terms, not as supplicants begging for scraps from your table." Admiral Zelkor straightened her spine, struggling to maintain dignity in what was quickly becoming the greatest crisis in Confederate history. "And if we refuse these terms, then we withdraw," Shaw said simply. "We take our technology and leave, but we also take the truth with us, broadcasting it across every system in your territory and beyond. Your society faces its history honestly, or it faces collapse." He wasn't threatening military action. He was threatening something far more devastating: cultural reckoning. Commander Voss stepped forward. "Captain Shaw, I've studied what records remain of human civilization. Your people valued concepts like forgiveness and reconciliation. Is there no path forward that acknowledges our past crimes while building toward genuine partnership?" For the first time, Shaw's stern expression softened. "Commander Voss, Ilara Voss. Commander Voss, those values you mention are precisely why we're having this conversation instead of a war. But reconciliation requires truth. It requires acknowledgement." Zelkor and the Council exchanged glances. Their options were limited. Fighting would be suicide. Denial would lead to collapse. Only one path remained. "We require time to consult with our outer worlds," the Admiral said finally. "You have 24 hours, Shaw replied. "We've waited 300 years. We won't wait longer." As the transmission ended, Commander Voss approached the Admiral. "I should be on the diplomatic team," she insisted. "I understand their history better than anyone here." Zelkor nodded slowly. "You'll lead it, because this isn't just a negotiation. It's first contact all over again. with a species we tried to destroy. 24 hours later, Commander Voss stood in a neutral meeting facility, an ancient space station predating even the Purge Wars. Captain Shaw arrived with a small delegation of humans, each more diverse than Voss had expected. Some appeared fully biological, others had visible technological enhancements, and a few seemed to exist somewhere in between. Humanity has taken many forms during our exile, Shaw explained, noting her fascination. We embraced change rather than fearing it. The negotiations were tense but productive. Humans would reclaim several uninhabited systems along the Confederate border, worlds that had once held their colonies. A truth commission would be established to document the Purge Wars accurately. And most significantly, technological exchange would begin. Carefully, gradually, but genuinely. Your people fear rapid change, Shaw acknowledged. We understand that now, though we don't share the sentiment. We'll proceed at a pace your civilization can absorb. As the formal agreements took shape, Voss found herself speaking privately with Shaw during a recess. Your technology. It's beyond anything we could have imagined, she admitted. How did you advance so quickly in isolation? Shaw smiled. Necessity, desperation, and because questioning the impossible isn't heresy to us. It's our natural state. When your ancestors banished us beyond the void barrier, they thought they were sending us to die. Instead, they forced us to become something new. And now, asked Voss, after centuries of preparing for this moment, what comes next for humanity? Shaw looked out a viewport toward the stars. We explore. We build. We remember, but we don't let the past consume us. That's another human trait your histories didn't capture. We can heal without forgetting. When the final accords were signed, something unexpected happened. The human delegation presented the Confederacy with a gift: the complete technological specifications for navigating the void barrier safely. There are wonders beyond that threshold, Shaw told the astonished Confederate leaders. Perhaps finding them together will help us build something better than either of our civilizations could alone. In the following months, human settlements began to appear in the reclaimed territories. They were unlike anything in Confederate space. Organic and mechanical elements blended in harmonious designs that seemed to grow from their environments rather than imposing upon them. Human ships moved freely through trade routes, bringing technologies, arts, and ideas long thought lost. It wasn't perfect. Centuries of propaganda couldn't be undone overnight. There were protests, isolated conflicts, and deep suspicion on both sides. But there was also curiosity, exchange, and gradually, understanding. Commander Voss, now appointed as the first Confederate ambassador to humanity, stood on the observation deck of her new posting. A joint research station positioned at the edge of the void barrier. Captain Shaw, who had become her frequent counterpart in diplomatic matters, joined her. Do you think they would be proud of us? Voss asked, gazing toward the unexplored expanse. Our ancestors who made such terrible choices. Shaw considered this. Pride isn't what matters. Learning is. Growing is. My ancestors who fled Earth didn't live to see this day, but they believed it would come. Not a day of vengeance, but a day of return. And so humanity reclaims its place among the stars, Voss mused. No, Shaw corrected gently. Humanity doesn't reclaim the past. We build the future. That's what your ancestors feared most about us. Not that we would destroy you, but that we would change you. And change, Ambassador Voss, is the only constant in this universe. Together, they watched as the first joint expedition prepared to venture beyond the void barrier. Human ingenuity and Xilarian precision combined in a new vessel that embodied both traditions. Not enemies any longer, not quite friends yet, but fellow travelers on a journey neither could have imagined 300 years before. The phantom in the void had become a bridge between worlds. And somewhere in the darkness beyond charted space, the next chapter of galactic history waited to be written, together.